Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 413, written by Mike Tastic, 23. An awkward porta-potty glitch. Hi all. Figured I'd tell my glitchy story after not wanting to for fear of disbelief. So one summer day, my friend and I were pretty bored with nothing to do in San Jose, California. We were recent high school grads with nothing to do. He suggested we explore the San Jose hills, mainly to see the sights once the sun set. He's the type that loves sunsets and sunrises, all the sights and such. I declined mainly because I knew getting to the top would mean crazy windy roads, which my stomach cannot handle at all. I was the guy in the friend group known to be temperamental with food, heights, anxiety, you name it. Now he knows this to be the case, but he insists. Eventually, he seemingly gives up and instead suggests we pick up some friends, including a girl who had the hots for him at his then job at Nob Hill's Grocers, and he suggested we drive around, maybe grab some food with everyone, etc. So we make our way around San Jose and pick up said girl and two other friends. We drove for a while, stopping for some snacks at a random liquor store, and eventually make our way towards the east side of San Jose. At this point, I'm wary about where we are going, and of course, we end up going up a hill. I immediately told my friend to drop me off if we were going to the top of the hill or mountain. He insisted we weren't going far, and that he found a spot where there were little to no windy roads. Something you should know is that this is my best bud, like actual best friends. And we have gone through the ringer together, and he has pushed me to be my better self. Sometimes that means pushing me out of my comfort zone, so I'm assuming he did this for reasons stated. Anyway, we're driving and we proceed to go up this mountain as the sun is setting. We park at a nice scenic stop overlooking a good amount of the city lights. At this point, I'm nauseous, but not enough to cause any issues. However, our group decides they want to go up higher, so long story short, I either stay there in the dark or head up with them. We're reaching the top, but at this point we're making stops every 3 turns because I cannot handle it. I'm about to throw up. Everyone is concerned at this point, and we decide to head back down. Again, we are stopping every once in a while due to me not wanting to yak in my best bud's newish car. And eventually the worst happens. I get my feared anxiety poop. At this point, I'm battling not crapping my pants and not yakking in the car. Luckily, our latest stop is what looks like a construction site of sorts. Just a simple 2-tractor setup with some caution tape blocking off an area. But I spot a porta-potty about 500 feet up a slight incline towards the wooded construction zone area. I hightail it to the porta-potty while my friends chill in the car. I'm doing my business. Luckily, there is toilet paper. I hear cars nearby going down the road. But all of a sudden I hear footsteps coming from the opposite area, further into the forest area. I get freaked out, but then I hear the voice of my best friend. He says he's up next and really needs to go too. I tell him to give me a minute and finish up my business. I come out of the porta-potty and look around for my friend, so I figured he went back to the car instead of chilling in the dark, creepy woods. I get to the car where I find all the friends looking over the city lights again. I ask my friend not to be too long and that there is toilet paper, so not to worry. He looks at me and asks, "What?" I say it's his turn to take a dump. Enjoy. And then he says he doesn't have to go. I then ask why then he came all the way up to the porta-potty and risked potentially hearing my explosive dumpage. Everyone starts looking at me funny, and I feel a joke coming, but they all looked sort of spooked and had a look in their face like I was the one joking. Then I remember how I heard my friend's footsteps approaching from the woods instead of the street. I tell them exactly what happened, and they all look at me like I'm crazy, and maybe it was due to my anxiety and what felt like a near-death experience going up and down windy roads. I brushed it all off and figured they were just pulling a fast one on me. I felt huge relief as soon as we hit a long, straight stretch of road leading back into the city. We stop at a taco truck, and I grab some carbonated water and gum, which help ease my stomach. I asked them if they were pulling a joke on me, and they all insist they all stayed by the car the whole time I was doing my business. Nothing like this has ever happened to me since. I have no other theories to go off other than a glitch, or my own crazy head playing tricks on me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the reading. Case notes, file number 413. So I'm thinking this is probably a doppelganger situation. That's the most likely explanation. For some reason, a lot of doppelganger stories, they seem to involve trickery. Like many doppelgangers are actually tricksters. I imagine sometimes people's doppelgangers are like real people, maybe long-lost twins that they don't even know they're related to, something like that, or just random happenstance where genetic variation can sometimes produce a similar-looking person. That's possible, but I think also what's happening is there are trickster spirits that have learned to copy the voice and mannerisms and appearance, sometimes, of someone else that the person knows that they want to play with, not always in an attempt to terrorize. Some of them probably are malicious, and I think that may be induced by insanity, or just how the person was before they died. If they were evil before they died, it stands to reason they would remain that way, even in the echo of death. Bonus file, written by Soviet Onion, 6-6. When even the bunnies are brutalized, you know there's evil afoot. My parents were out of town, and I lived in a small neighborhood in upstate New York. My backyard was half cleared land and half dense woods. There was a small creek that ran behind my house too, so I could see all sorts of animals at night, including turkey, foxes, possums, raccoons, and deer. One night around 1 a.m., I was on the couch in the extended living room part of my home, where 3 of the walls had windows and we had a skylight. This is important because I had a complete view of almost all of my backyard up to the tree's edge, including the moon overhead, which that night was a waning crescent. I heard the sound of a very angry squirrel for about 5 minutes, and I kinda brushed it off because I've heard angry squirrels before. Then I heard the most terrifying screech. It sounded like a goose had just been murdered and was screaming. It scared the crap out of me, and I immediately rushed over to the windows to see if I could see anything. I was worried it might have been a wolf, since my neighbor's cat likes to go wandering outside and usually kills a bunny or two and then leaves them in our front yard. It was pitch black, and my porch light barely illuminated anything but our back porch. I brushed off the noise and went back to bed shortly after. The next morning, I headed over to my neighbor's house, who have hunted before and occasionally would bow hunt too. I asked if they heard that noise last night, and they said yes. They thought it was a deer crying for help. They told me they were going to investigate the woods in a few hours to see what happened. I was reluctant to ask to go with, but I was determined to know what the noise had been. A few hours later, my neighbors and I went into the woods. We didn't have to go far when we saw a dead squirrel, pretty much ripped to pieces. We continued on, figuring that squirrels don't have much meat on them, so the animal probably tried to get as much as it could out of it. We wandered around for about 5 more minutes when we came across 5 dead bunnies, a deer and her fawn, and a dead goose. Now this fact frightened me the most. 3 of the dead bunnies had just their heads missing and the body was intact. The other 2 were ripped to pieces similar to the dead squirrel. I almost gagged at the smell of it all. I didn't dare walk towards the goose or the deer. My neighbor, who had a bow on him, walked towards the mother deer to see she had long claw marks in her torso and her head had been mangled. The fawn, however, had its head missing as well. Now, the weirdest part of all the dead animals was the goose. The goose was fully intact, except that its lungs had been ripped open and all of its inner organs were gone. My neighbor's wife immediately called the police and said that there was a bear roaming the property and was attacking innocent animals. I had my suspicions, but I do not believe that this was a bear. My neighbor, who had the bow, was keeping a clear eye on the surrounding woods like he was watching for something. His wife paid no attention to this and continued to talk to the police. Then it hit me with a feeling of dread and chills. New York gets cold in the morning, but this was summer and the humidity was usually around 90%. The entirety of the woods seemed to be silent as well. We were near the creek and couldn't hear the water flowing either. I could see my neighbor had the same feeling wash over him as he raised his bow and loaded an arrow into it. He told his wife to be quiet and for me to stand back. I could not see anything, but that feeling was still with me. My neighbor, I know, saw something, but refused to tell me what it was since I was 15 and he probably didn't want to scare me. After a few minutes, the feeling of dread was gone, and the sound of something moving through the forest could be heard in the distance. My neighbor lowered his bow and told us we had to leave. We immediately listened, and by the time we got back to the small neighborhood, the town police had arrived. My neighbor explained the story, and the police advised us to stay inside. They later sent a few animal control people to survey the area to try and get the bear away from the neighborhood. They came back empty-handed. I never knew what was out there, but I had done some research and I believe it might have been a wendigo by the dead animal killings. My neighbors refused to talk to me about it ever again. And my neighbor who had the bow seemed very cautious after that. If anybody has any insight on this, please say something. This happened a few years ago, and I now live in a different state. I haven't told anybody this story because I thought I was overthinking, which I do a lot. Overanalyzing is kind of my thing. I do not have contact with this neighbor anymore either. For anyone wondering, my neighbor had moved to this bigger piece of land because he had hoped to bow hunt on his own property so he could stand up in the trees. As far as I know, New York State deemed that it was still a form of hunting, and later the town police told him he couldn't do that anymore.